This may be the best UFC betting card of the entire year, and it's only just started. Unders, parlays, favorites, underdogs. I have mapped out the full card for profit. And in this video, I'm going to go through the entire fight card with you, giving you my picks and predictions for every single fight on the card. Welcome to the official UFC Houston edition of the lucrative MMA betting show. And that is right, we are back in good old Houston, Texas, where we have a crazy main event. Fluffy Hernandez on a rocket ship straight to the top is taking on somebody who has already been at the top, a former champion in Sean Strickland. This is a main event matchup that is so interesting, both from a fan perspective and also from a technical betting perspective. So I'm very excited to talk to you guys about that one. We also have a battle of the heavy hitters in the co-main event. Geoff Neal, elite boxer for MMA, is taking on Uros Medic, who has crazy power in those hands. Who is going to get cracked first? Who is going to go down first? I'm going to talk all about that very soon. We also have Dan Ige, another guy who can lay claim to one of the solidest boxers in the UFC. He is taking on the streaking Melquizael Costa in the featherweight division. We've also got a heavyweight fight on tap. UFC veteran Serghei Spivac is taking on UFC somewhat newcomer Ante Delija, looking to bounce back from his controversial defeat against Cortez Acosta in his very last fight. We're also going to talk about Reese versus Michel Pereira, an bout that I am not even sure makes it past the 3-minute mark. We have all those fights and more in store for you today on this episode of the show. So put your seatbelt on and get ready for the ride. Run the intro and I'll see you on the other side. What's going on, lads? Welcome back to another edition of the show. I'm happy to be here. I am now back from Sydney, Australia. It was an amazing experience going to Sydney, being there live to watch Alexander the Great cash us our max bet, but also just watch him perform. You know, I went to that fight because I thought it may be the last fight of Alexander's career, or it could be, right? So to be there live, it was extremely fun. I went out there with my whole team. We sat front row. It was really an amazing experience. But boys, we are now back and that is behind us. You know, that is the past. We did cash on that UFC card, but there's a new UFC card coming up. There's already been a UFC card since then, and we need to cash again. We did cash on the last UFC card, Mario Batista versus Oliveira. I gave out Mario Batista on my show. That cashed with ease. In my video, Hammer of the Week, it was an epic cash. I'll go over that on the next Hammer of the Week, which will come out later this week. We also had a PFL event. Unfortunately, I did not win on that PFL event, so I'm super motivated to win all events this week, not just the UFC like we did last week. Before we get into the show, I would like to ask you to click the subscribe button. It's a free way to say thank you to me for doing these videos weekly. A lot of people think they clicked, but they haven't, so I'd appreciate if you can do that. But we'll get straight into the card, boys. It's an exciting card. It's a card that honestly I believe could be one of the best of the year. I did say that in the intro, and I meant that. I'm going to have a lot of bets on this card. I will most likely have one or maybe even two max bets on this card, which I've never done before. I've never had two max bets on the same card. Currently, my max bet record is 46 wins and 5 losses, which is a record almost not seen before in sports betting history, at least tracked online. So yeah, I may have two on this card. I'm almost certainly going to have one. So I'm very excited for it, boys. And without further ado, let's get into the main event. So in the main event of the evening, we have the odds makers finally giving Fluffy Hernandez big respect, as he is currently sitting as a minus 280 favorite over the former champion Sean Strickland, who has an underdog price tag of plus 240 odds. Sean Strickland coming into this fight with a crazy record, almost 40 fights there with 29 wins and only 7 losses. Anthony Hernandez, on the other hand, almost half the amount of fights, but less than half the amount of defeats. 15 wins with only 2 losses, and currently on a crazy win streak that dates back to 2020. This is such a fantastic fight, guys. I mean, if you are a fan of MMA, you are automatically a fan of Fluffy Hernandez. This guy is pace, pressure, and violence personified. If you do not kill that man, he is not going away. He is going to come and kill you. He is the definition of kill or be killed. In all of his losses, he has been finished. You know, so that only brings more truth to the fact that if you don't kill him, he's going to win the fight. Like, you literally have to finish him for him not to win. You can't beat him via decision. I mean, a couple people have come close. close. We speak about Brendan Allen in the rematch. You know, he was close. But outside of that, I mean, Fluffy's just running over these dudes, man. Yes, he gets into trouble. Yes, he gets hurt. Go back and look at multiple fights. This guy's got cracked, rocked early. Roman Kopylov, you know, he had him hurt to the body. Let's not forget Michel Pereira had him hurt to the body. Edmund Shabazian was teeing off on Fluffy Hernandez in that first round. But those guys all succumbed to the pace, pressure, and violence of Fluffy and ultimately got finished by him on the ground. And that is exactly where he does his best work. He's a ground specialist. You know, so much so that he submitted one of the most credentialed Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu MMA fighters of all time, Rodolfo Vieira. You know, I know you guys remember that one. Submitting Rodolfo Vieira it literally became a phrase in my YouTube videos and my analysis, betting picks videos, and in my private community where I help people bet on MMA. It literally became a phrase for me. I used to say, remember guys, anything can happen in MMA. Even Fluffy Hernandez submitted Rodolfo Vieira. That's how unlikely that outcome was to happen. But that's how good Fluffy is, man. He can submit anyone, he can finish anyone, and he can put the pace and pressure and out cardio almost anybody. On the other hand, we have Sean Strickland. This guy has been there and done it. You know, this guy was a champion. He beat the great Israel Adesanya, had a very close fight against the great Dricus du Plessis. You know, this guy has been in there with the best fighters of his weight class, of his generation. He has even been in there against Kamaru Usman back in the day. A little known fact. He has beaten great fighters. He has finished great fighters, just like the pre-mentioned Brendan Allen. You know, a great finish in a good fight from Sean Strickland on his way up to the title. Sean Strickland is for real. Sean Strickland is legit. And this is a great clash of styles, boys. We have a guy who doesn't wrestle ever, but who is an elite wrestler in Sean Strickland. I will go on record saying that Sean Strickland is an elite MMA wrestler. Not a good one, but an elite one. I truly believe that, you know. I've seen evidence in his fights, you know, his anti-wrestling style. Also, some of his takedowns, like against Uriah Hall in the Uriah Hall fight, but also in training footage. I actually sat with his head coach, Eric Nixick, at Extreme Couture when I went over to Las Vegas, and we spoke about Sean Strickland naturally. I chatted to Eric for an hour. Eric is somebody I consider a friend, and he told me some very interesting things about Sean Strickland. He told me that Sean is literally in the gym out wrestling Magomed Ankalaev, the former UFC light heavyweight champion, right? He is out wrestling him. And Magomed Ankalaev is a pretty good wrestler himself. You know, so for Sean to be doing that, it tells me a lot. Not only have I heard it, right, because it's one thing hearing it and seeing it, but I've also seen footage of Sean Strickland, which I'm going to try and source for you now, wrestling with Alex Polizzi, who again is a light heavyweight wrestler who fight formerly for Bellator, now for PFL, and he's a very good wrestler for the light heavyweight division. He was out there wrestling in an MMA contest with Yoel Romero, right? These guys were going back and forth.Alex is a very good wrestler. Sean was out wrestling him. You know, Sean looked massive. Sean looked bigger than him. So Sean, make no mistake about it, is a very good wrestler. But one thing which lets Sean down, in my opinion, is sometimes, I don't know if it's mentality or decision making or if they're both the same thing, but it is that, right? It's in the cage. Sometimes he doesn't make the optimal choices. He's got all the skills, in my opinion, but he doesn't make the optimal choices. And I honestly feel like if he makes the right choices, he can beat Fluffy Hernandez this weekend. I truly believe that. I just don't know whether he is going to make the right choices. I don't know whether he's going to come in there the best version of himself. I can't count on him being the Sean Strickland that captured the title. Because in my opinion, he hasn't looked like that for a couple of years now. In his last fight against Dricus du Plessis, this was a rematch, and Sean knew what he had to do in that rematch, right? He had to stop giving up the pressure battle, which du Plessis at times was winning in that first fight, and stop giving up space in the octagon, which honestly led to du Plessis winning a very close split decision there. Throw more volume and basically just bite down on his mouthpiece and push more. You know, he didn't push enough in that first fight. In the second fight, he didn't give up as much takedowns. You know, he did well in terms of the footwork battle, but he didn't throw volume. You know, he didn't throw enough volume and he let that fight just slip away. It was almost like he was in there sparring. You know, he could have done a lot better in that fight. And I'm worried that if he comes in with that type of mentality, that type of decision making, he's going to let the fight get away from him against Fluffy Hernandez. Like I said, he doesn't make the best decisions in the octagon. When I was sitting with Eric, he told me another very, very funny story that ended up going viral on social media. One of the most viewed videos I've ever made. I think it got over 500,000 views. And it was a story, and I'm going to play it now actually, but it was a story of how Sean Strickland practiced wrestling for the Alex Pereira camp. And he was meant to go in there and wrestle. I'll let Eric explain the story because he says it a lot better than me. But I think it perfectly encapsulates the mindset sometimes of Sean Strickland. It can be important related to this fight as well. So let's hear this quick story. It's only about a 60-second reel.
When Sean fought Alex Pereira, we
Yeah.
wrestled all camp.
Really?
All camp.
You know a funny story?
All camp.
I bet on Sean to win via submission. It was 10-1, right?
Yeah.
Plus 1,000.
Yeah.
Massive odds. I was like, look, I don't know if he's going to wrestle because a lot of times he doesn't. But if he does, this shit's going to look live.
Right.
And obviously he didn't do it.
But here's the funny thing is we spend 8 weeks with Ankalaev.
Wow,
and we're
really?
fucking wrestling. And Sean is taking Ankalaev down.
Bro, he's an elite wrestler.
Oh, bro, he can wrestle. And his ground game, his jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
I mean, he's phenomenal there. We're like, okay, this is our best path to victory, right?
Yeah.
So we're in the back. It's myself, Edmund, and Alex Zarate. Edmund's warming up with Sean in the back, and they're touch sparring. And that's kind of how Sean likes to get warmed up.
Yeah.
And then the touch sparring turns into a little bit more sparring. And Sean's like, you know what, man? Like, I feel good. Like, I feel like I can strike with this guy. And we're like,
in the back.
all right, bro,
After 8
remember,
weeks.
the game plan is to strike for 30 seconds and then just make an attachment.
Yeah.
Just to try to slow Alex's striking down and make him worry about the wrestling.
Yeah.
So then, like, round 1, round 2 goes by, the warm up, and then Sean's like, you know what, hey, man, let me know when it's a minute, because then I'll shoot after a minute. You're like, Sean, the longer you keep going,
30, 40,
the
50.
more you're on the fucking feet. So, hand to God, this is the funniest shit ever. I say funny now because it's been years down the line.
Yeah.
So we're walking, and Sean's hitting the corridor. We're walking out, right, or hitting the walk.
Yeah.
It's me and Edmund standing right next to each other. And Sean looks back at me and Edmund goes, let me know when it's halfway. I'm like, no, not halfway, motherfucker. Shoot, right away.
Yeah, that's funny,
Shoot.
bro.
So we're sitting in the corner, and you can see it, bro. I think I had the video, and I'm sitting just like this. Like, bro, we're just on borrowed time. We're just
that's
striking this guy.
mad.
And then I remember, just like this, I'm like, halfway.
Yeah.
Fucking wow, big old left hook comes fired. So I mean, you can game plan for it, and like sometimes, man, like, you know, and to Sean's credit, he felt comfortable even in the fight. He's like, you know, I felt my range. I could.
Yeah, he was putting good pressure on him,
You know, I
like
felt
he does to
comfortable,
everyone.
right? And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
boom, and shit doesn't go as planned. You know.
Yeah.
So you can see there what I'm talking about when it comes to Sean's decision making and fight IQ. You know, he has all the tools to make good decisions, and a lot of times in fights he does. But he doesn't always do that, right? So if he goes in there against Fluffy Hernandez, the pace and pressure and volume king, and is a little bit hesitant, like his last fight against Dricus du Plessis, or doesn't follow the game plan, like in the Alex Pereira fight, then he may find himself being outworked, out-cardioed, and out-volumed by someone like Fluffy Hernandez. Because one thing about Fluffy Hernandez is we don't need to worry what game plan he's going to implement in the octagon. He's not like a Sean. He is going to go out there and do the same thing in every single damn fight, and you can count on that. That's why Fluffy is one of the greatest fighters to bet on or even against, because we know what he's going to do. You know, I love fighters which are easy to predict, right? Oftentimes the market doesn't give you value on them because they are easy to predict, but sometimes you can extract value. Someone else who I just tape studied earlier today in preparation for this one was Edmund Shabazian, right? I taped Fluffy Hernandez versus Edmund Shabazian, and Edmund Shabazian obviously gassed out in that fight, and Edmund always gasses out, you know, so we can rely on him to gas out. And I love those type of fighters. We can rely on Fluffy Hernandez to go in there, shoot 15 takedowns, maybe 20 if it's a 5-round fight, throw lots of volume, smile at his opponent, never get tired, always walk forward, chain together multiple takedowns and submissions, and always push the grappling. You know, we can rely on him to do that. This fight stylistically is so interesting to me, boys, because like I said, I really believe that Sean Strickland has all the tools to beat a Fluffy Hernandez. What do you need to beat Fluffy Hernandez? Well, first of all, the main thing is you need cardio, because that boy has maybe the best cardio we've ever seen in the middleweight division, right? Like, who has better cardio than Fluffy? Maybe someone has the same level, but to have better cardio, I don't think it's possible, man. Fluffy Hernandez has elite cardio. You need cardio to beat him. Without cardio, you can only beat him with a lucky punch in round one or a good punch in round one, right? After that, he's going to cook you. Sean has elite cardio. We know that, right? So he has one of the things you need to beat Fluffy. What else do you need to beat Fluffy? Well, you need to be a better striker than him, right? Because you're not going to be a better wrestler or grappler than him. Maybe you can be on the same level like Brendan Allen, who's still like a tier below. But basically, you need to be able to outstrike him, because you're probably not going to out-wrestle him, right? And then third of all, you need to be able to keep the fight on the feet to use your striking advantages. You need those three things, right? Yes, of course, if you have crazy power, you could just land a kill shot. It can happen. But I mean, to consistently beat him, to actually have a good chance of beating Fluffy Hernandez over 5 rounds, if you actually fight him and you don't catch him early, you need those 3 things. Sean has all of them. He is a better striker. He does have elite cardio, and he does have very, very good wrestling and anti-wrestling. So on paper, he has all the tools to win. But boys, if you've been watching me from not even a while, but literally just last week, you will hear in my breakdown, go back and watch it if you want, Gaffarov versus Jakub Wiklax. The hammer of the week was doesn't go to decision, right? And I broke that fight down in detail. And in that video, I said that Muin Gaffarov has all the tools needed to win the fight. But I can't trust him to do so because he puts his head in dangerous positions and he has low fight IQ and makes bad mistakes. One of the best reads I've ever had in MMA betting history. That is one of my best reads ever. Muin Gaffarov had all the tools to win that fight. And please go back and watch my breakdown of that fight on the Hammer of the Week video, right? Not on my breakdown, but on the Hammer of the Week video. Go back and watch that because I specifically remember breaking that fight down to literally perfection. And I kind of feel like that in this fight, boys. I feel like Sean has all the tools, right? But he may not utilize them, just like Muin Gaffarov didn't. So I really want to bet on Sean, but I don't know if he's going to use the tools needed to win my bet on him. But if he does, then he can win and my bet's going to look genius, right? So this may be a lucrative special where I say in every show and still somehow, no matter how many times I say it, people don't understand it. Or I guess I always have new people watching the channel, right? But I'll always say the same thing, boys, because I'm a professional sports bettor, someone who makes their full-time income from it. I've been doing it for 5 years full-time now. So I understand the game. And something that's very important for you to understand with my predictions is that picks are not bets. So I may now, in the next 2 minutes, call Fluffy Hernandez as the winner of this fight. I may do that, right? I don't even like to give an outright prediction because I don't care about predictions. I only care about where the betting value is because that's the only way you can make money. Google plus EV plus expected value betting if you want to know how professional betting works, or you can listen to me. But I don't care what the prediction is, but I like to give it out just because people always asking for what's your ultimate final pick, right? Even though that's nothing to do with how you make money. So it's kind of frustrating, but I do give it out because I want to give the people what they want to some degree. And I like to finalize my breakdowns with a pick. But what I'm trying to say, boys, is that maybe I'll pick Fluffy Hernandez in this one. But I'm not betting on Fluffy Hernandez because I can't see value at minus 280 odds. And this is a numbers game. It does not matter who's going to win. It matters where the value is, right? And I believe that there is value on Sean Strickland here. I cannot get to Fluffy minus 280. Can I get to Fluffy minus 180? Maybe Fluffy's minus 150 just because of the pace and pressure, just because I know we can trust him to do what he needs to do to win the fight. And I don't know whether we can trust Sean, right? So maybe you make him a favorite based on that, but you don't make him minus 280. So lucrative special. Picks are not bets. I may be betting on Sean Strickland, even though I may be picking Fluffy Hernandez, right? So I hope you understand that one, boys. I haven't made my decision yet. I'm not going to rush my decision for the sake of this video. I'm going to take my time. I do this for a living, so I want to take my time and not just put my money early just because I'm making a breakdown video. I'm going to think about it. You know my thoughts on the fight. I think Sean has all the tools to win the fight. I want to know Sean's mentality a little bit. I want to see his training regime a little bit. I want to look at the Instagram a little bit more. I haven't done my due diligence on that. I just want to see what's been going on in the mind of Sean Strickland lately. Maybe that'll edge my breakdown 1 or 2%, and then I'll make a decision based on that. So given my ultimate prediction for this fight, boys, I am going to end up saying that I believe Fluffy Hernandez wins a decision here. I don't think he finishes Sean. Sean is a very tough guy. Even though Fluffy is a finisher, I do believe Sean will last to a decision. But my final prediction will be Fluffy Hernandez to win this fight. As I said, though, this is a betting show, and I cannot get behind Fluffy Hernandez at minus 280 odds. The odds would have to come in more for me to bet Fluffy Hernandez. And like I said, boys, I think if these guys fight like 100 times, right, Sean Strickland has the tools to win. And out of those 100 times, he probably shows up a bunch and does win the fight, But I just think on this weekend, based on Sean's inactivity in and out of the cage, and based on Fluffy's activity and just where they're at career trajectory-wise, I do think Fluffy's volume and janky approach is going to get him the win over Sean Strickland here. Honestly, disclaimer, boys, it's always really hard to make this show when I'm trying to give betting breakdowns, right? So I'm trying to tell you where the value is, but then I'm also trying to pick a winner to some degree as well, because I want to tell you who I think wins. And, oftentimes they go against each other. A lot of times I think someone's going to win, but I don't think there's any value on them. I think there's value on the other side. So then at the end of the breakdown, do I say the guy's going to win who I think is going to win? Or do I say, do I give you the pick and prediction as the guy who I think has value, even if I think he's going to lose? It's just, it's a weird one, I don't want to give out these fighters who I think have no value as winners just for the sake of getting a pick right, because that's not the way I operate. I want to give you guys as much knowledge as possible. And so I try to tell you everything through a betting angle, because as I always say, sports betting is a skill. MMA predictions is a different skill. Sports betting is a completely different skill, and that's what most people don't have. People can predict an MMA fight. It's not that hard. But to actually get the right bets on, that's the hard part, So I'm always conflicted in that, and maybe I still haven't got things perfectly down, but yeah, I just wanted to give you a little insight into, how I record these shows and do my breakdowns. But yeah. Next up, we have Geoff Neal taking on Uros Medic in the co-main event. Somebody may be going to sleep in this one, boys. And the odds makers believe Geoff Neal is getting it done. He is currently a -180 favorite, with the underdog price tag on Uros Medic coming back at +155. Geoff Neal has a record of 16 wins, 7 losses, with Uros Medic coming into this fight with a 12 win and 3 loss record. This is a great matchup, and one of the reasons why this is a great matchup, boys, is because they're both strikers. They're both strikers. They're both power punchers to some degree. I know Geoff Neal hasn't got knockouts in quite some time, but he's been fighting the best in the division. We talk about Carlos Prates in his last fight, potentially one of the most dangerous strikers. Well, no, not potentially. One of the most dangerous strikers ever seen in the welterweight division. Maybe the most dangerous. I think at this point, he's probably the most dangerous striker I've ever seen at a welterweight. I really believe that. And, Geoff Neal's been fighting those type of guys. He also fought Ian Gary, the only guy to defeat the most dangerous striker in Carlos Prates. He also fought Shavkat Rakhmonov, the only guy to defeat the best striker in the welterweight division. So this guy's been in there with the best of them. He fought Rafael Dos Anjos. That fight ended very soon. Dos Anjos had a leg injury. It was quite unfortunate, but he has taken a big step down in competition here, so that's why I believe the odds are where they're at -180. But make no mistake about it, even though Geoff Neal has been in there with a lot of good guys and, you haven't seen his power recently, he has got elite power, very good boxing, and he can finish anybody on his day, including Uros Medic. Medic, on the other hand, we know that he can finish anyone because we've seen in his recent fights, right? One of the most important things you have to do in sports betting is not get too overhyped over recent fights that the fighters who we're breaking down have fought. That's going to be a running theme throughout your entire betting career, but definitely a running theme throughout this show as well. And I'll mention it a couple more times before we're done. But Uros Medic, yeah, he looks good lately, but he hasn't been fighting that cream of the crop, not like Geoff Neal has. So I believe that's why Geoff Neal is the favorite in this matchup. Big step down in the competition. Doesn't mean he's going to win it. Geoff Neal is probably on the tail end of his career now, where Uros Medic is not. He's probably in the middle of his career, something like that. We got Geoff Neal at 35 years old, Uros Medic at 32. And it's a very intriguing fight for me. I think it's going to be an exciting fight. I think it's going to be fireworks. I mean, anytime Uros Medic steps in the octagon, honestly, boys, it is fireworks. Say what you want about him. This guy's never in a boring fight. And in fact, he has not been out of the first round in 3 years. You have to go back to 2023 to find this guy's last fight that went more than 2 minutes and 9 seconds. That's crazy, boys. So not only has this guy not been out of the first round for 3 years, he hasn't been out of the first 2 minutes for 3 years. And he hasn't been out of the first minute for 2 years. This guy is either getting smoked early or smoking his opponents early. Crazy stat about Uros Medic. He's never been to decision. He almost did against Semmelsberger, but he got the third round finish there. This guy has never been to a decision in his professional MMA career. 15 fights, no decisions. I don't expect that to change here, boys. I don't expect that to change here. I believe he's going to go and knock out Geoff Neal, or he's going to get knocked out by Geoff Neal. I don't think there's going to be a submission in this fight. I doubt there's even going to be takedowns. There may be some grappling. There may be some clinch control. We have seen Geoff Neal do that before in a Neil Magny fight. We have seen Geoff Neal do that in some fights where he tries to, mix the pace and slow his opponents down. But I don't think there's going to be much takedown attempts or grappling or anything like that. I mean, these guys are going to go out there and swing heavy lever and someone's getting knocked out. I'm very interested to see how Geoff Neal returns here, because in his last fight, he got decimated. One of the most most brutal KOs of the year, a fight that I was lucky enough to bet on the Carlos Prates side and cash, and me and everybody in the Elite Zone cashed on that. And I was also lucky enough to watch that live in Chicago and celebrate that win, and then actually go and hang out with Carlos Prates after the KO. But watching that KO live, I can tell you now, boys, that was extremely brutal. And sometimes fighters do not return the best of their form when they get brutally knocked out like that. So that is a bit of a worry on the Geoff Neal side. How is he going to return after that brutal KO, that decimation by Carlos Prates? But honestly, before the KO, he was looking pretty good. He was tagging Carlos, he was getting tagged himself, and Carlos did seem to be edging away on a minute level. You know, like when you understand striking mechanics, you can kind of see someone pulling away. Carlos was starting to pull away. But in terms of like the judges, that shit was a very, very close fight up until the KO. So Geoff Neal was still fully in that fight. You know, I think he was going to be 1-0 down, but it wasn't an uncompetitive round. And then he got smoked with 1 second to go right on the buzzer, you know. So I don't know how he's going to return based on that. I think he's going to return how he usually fights. Like, I don't think there's much evidence to say that he's going to come back a shell of himself or anything like that. But it is possible. Once you get knocked out once, oftentimes you start to get knocked out a lot more. So we could see Geoff Neal potentially start to get knocked out more now. And Uros Medic is definitely going to test that chin. But I have to favor Geoff Neal overall. I mean, the experience advantage, the skill, overall MMA advantage he has is big here. And the step down in competition is massive. You know, he's going from fighting the best fighters in a division literally to a middling fighter in the division. Someone who was knocked out by Punahele Soriano. You know, someone who got dropped by Gilbert Urbina 2 fights ago. Gilbert Urbina is not a good striker. He's probably cut from the UFC now. And he got knocked down by Gilbert Urbina. That is not a good look. And if he can knock you down, Geoff Neal can not knock you down, but knock you out, you know? And that is going to be my ultimate prediction for the fight, boys. It's one of those fights where I'm picking a winner, Geoff Neal, and I'm not going to be betting on Uros Medic. I can say that, right? So it's not one where I see massive value in Uros. Do I think there's any value on any money line? I don't really know. I need to think about it a little bit more in depth. What I do like for this one a little bit more, and I'll tell you guys that now, is the violence in this fight. So currently they're under 1.5 rounds at minus 175 odds. Now, I can't, say that that's a fantastic bet of the odds. I do think it probably finishes within the first 1.5 rounds. I do think Geoff Neal probably gets a first round KO here, just because Uros Medic is so volatile. He is so prone to getting knocked out or knocking someone out early. It's probably not going to come later, but I could definitely see a round 2 knockout. And then if you play the under 1.5 at minus 175, it's a little bit tricky. I'd like to see what it doesn't go to decision odds are at. It might be better. If they're giving us a minus 350, doesn't go to decision. I don't think that's terrible, as a parlay piece or as a straight bet, risking 3.5% to earn 1% return on your money. I don't think that's a terrible option there. So, I think maybe that doesn't go to decision, maybe a better play than the under 1.5, just because I could see a second round KO for Neal. And maybe he gets hurt round 1 and he comes back in round 2 or something like that. So first of all, I like violence in this one, boys. I like violence, and ultimately I will pick Geoff Neal to get it done. I will pick Geoff Neal to get it done via KO in round 1. And that's how I see the fight playing out. Next fight on the card, another banger. Dan Ige taking on Melquizael Costa. Dan Ige coming into this fight with a record of 19 wins, 10 losses, double-digit losses. One of the only fighters on the card with double-digit losses, but a veteran who's been in there with the best of them. Melquizael Costa, on the other hand, 25 wins and 7 losses. So more fights than Ige, but much less experienced in the UFC at least. Currently, they have Melquizael Costa as a big favorite, minus 220 odds with the underdog price tag on Dan Ige coming back at plus 185. Very good fight, this one, boys. And much like the last one, this is a striker's delight. I'd say maybe not as ferocious or violent of a striker these two are. Ige could be, but sometimes he's hesitant. But I think the way these two match up is going to be an exciting fight. No doubt. I can't see it not being an exciting fight. The only way it won't be is if Ige is very hesitant in his strikes, which sometimes he is. In his last fight he was, and sometimes he's a little bit too cautious and patient, it seems. But even in that case, then you're going to see Melquizael Costa throw these high kicks. Cue that Morgan Charrier high kick. That was absolutely unbelievable. His body kicks, and I think the excitement will come from seeing Costa's range striking, honestly, if Ige isn't hesitant. And if he isn't hesitant, it's going to be a war, because Ige is going to step into range, throw these big body hooks, big overhands, great boxing combinations, and, he could slump Costa. He definitely has a chance to do it. So as I said, Ige is a pretty big underdog at the moment. I'm kind of surprised to see the odds like that. Ige seems to always be semi-disrespected by the odds makers. You know, it does seem like that. Or at least if he's not disrespected, the odds makers are not good at lining his fights. Like outside of his last fight, he is usually disrespected. He was a -220 favorite there. He did lose to Patricio Pitbull, but the market seems to have a hard time reading him. You know, and that's one of the first things that comes to my mind when I see this fight is the odds and the fact that the market has a hard time reading Dan Ige. And as professional sports bettors, we need to look at the market, not the matchup, right? So I think a lot of times people get very sidetracked by the specific matchup and they ignore the market and the market biases. And we have seen that the market, which means just other pool of bettors, the bookmakers, whatever you want to call it, combination of both, for the most part, the other bettors, have a hard time reading Dan Ige fights. I mean, they had him as a pick'em against Chan Sung Young and got dominated in that fight, you know? They had him as a pick'em against Damon Jackson and look, -500 in that fight. You know, they had him as a +200 against Lopez and against Bryce Mitchell and Lerone Murphy. And all of these fights, he looked less than +200. The Bryce Mitchell fight, he looked about a pick'em, you know, and Murphy fight, he knocked him down. Lopez fight, dominated round 3. The Sean Woodson fight, he was a big underdog. Me and Neal Elite Zone cashed on him. We cashed on him via TKO as well. It was a poor stoppage, but he was up 2-0. Again, questionable scorecards, but crazy odds, right? Should have been a favorite in that fight, if not pick 'em. So the odds makers often get Ige's odds wrong, and I think they might have done it wrong here, boys. I think they might have done it wrong here. I mean, Dan Ige could potentially show up very hesitant, poor fight IQ, and get kicked to pieces. And as I've mentioned earlier, Melquizael Costa has one of the best kicks in the division at the moment, one of the best kicking games. We saw what he did to Morgan Charrier in that last fight. I will say that if Morgan Charrier fights Costa 10 times, I think that happens no times. You know, I think they need to fight about 30, 40, 50 times for that to happen even once. I reckon if they fight 100 times, that probably happens twice. Like, I think that's such a low probability outcome, but it did happen that time. That's what MMA is, right? It's a crazy variant sport, you know. But if Ige comes in here on his game, I think he exposes some of the pocket defense and offense from Costa. You know, I think he exposes that because I think Ige in the pocket is much better than Costa. I think Costa at range is much better than Ige, but that's the game. That's MMA. That's why it's so intriguing, and that's why we can make money on it, because there's so many aspects to look at, and oftentimes the bookmakers in the market overlook certain aspects, you know? An aspect that they may be overlooking in this fight is that this is a step down in competition for Dan Ige. Now, you may say that Melquizael Costa is not a step down in competition compared to his last fight, Patricio Pitbull. I believe it is. Pitbull has a very good, well-rounded style. I don't think Costa has the same style. I don't think Costa has proved as much. I think Pitbull is a better fighter overall, and he's proved a lot more, and probably even a harder matchup for Ige than Costa is, because he has the wrestling in his back pocket. Did get 5 takedowns in that fight, over 2 minutes, just over 2 minutes of control time. Costa doesn't have that game, in my opinion, though he can get takedowns. I don't think he has that same game. And then when you look at his losses, because it's not a step down from his wins, but those are his wins. His losses: Diego Lopez, just fought for the title, one of the best in the division. Lerone Murphy, going to fight for the title, one of the best in the division. Bryce Mitchell, fought to Coria, super high-level fighter, one of the best in the division. Movsar Evloev, going to fight for a title, one of the best in the division. Josh Emmett, fought for a title, one of the best in the division. Korean Zombie, long time ago, still one of the best in the division. Fought Max Holloway, fought for a title before. You get what I'm trying to say, right? Costa is not on that level. And those are the only guys to beat Dan Ige. Patricio Pitbull, we mentioned him. So make no mistake about it, this is a step down in competition for Dan Ige. But just like Sean Strickland, it's sometimes hard to trust the game that he brings to the octagon. You know, because watching this guy's tape time and time again, I'm mentally shouting at the screen like, push Ige, throw a little bit more. He's there for the taking. You know, against these high-level fighters, he's got the skills to do it. He just sometimes doesn't step on the gas enough. You know, sometimes pushes a little bit too late. Like that Diego Lopez fight. Ends up coming back into the fight in round 3 on about a day's short notice to hours short notice, right? Rolls up to the octagon like a G with no training or no training camp, and he dominates round 3, you know, but maybe he could have pushed a little bit earlier and won the fight. The Lerone Murphy fight, he hurts him. He can't really replicate the same plan. He gets out volume. So it is a bit of a risk betting on Dan Ige. Even when me and all of my guys in my VIP bet on Dan Ige versus Sean Woodson, you know, that was a close fight up until the stoppage. I didn't know who was winning. I kind of felt like Dan Ige was winning, but I was like, it could go either way. I hoped that they would score the fight for Dan Ige because I felt that was extremely fair with the damage, and Sean Woodson was throwing out volume that wasn't doing anything. But at the end of the day, you never know what way the judges score these fights. The Bryce Mitchell fight, again, it was very close to him winning, but he just couldn't stop the pivotal takedowns to win the fight. If he stopped one takedown a little bit earlier, he wins the fight. You know, it's kind of a consistent theme with Dan Ige. But I will say that the guys he's doing this against and making bad mistakes against most of the time are higher level than Costa. So that does go back to the experience part. But it's a great fight. You know, I got Costa at kicking range all day. I think he can piece up Ige. But Ige is experienced. He has been in there with the best of them. He has been in there with long-rangey strikers before. He has been in there with very good kickers like Lerone Murphy before, Edson Barbosa. And he knows what it takes to win. It's just, does he implement that? During my research, I have noticed that Costa still isn't out in Houston preparing for this fight. You know, he's still in Brazil, which is not ideal because he has shown some cardio issues before, whereas Dan Ige has shown that round 3 is his best round. A lot of times you look at the Lopez fight, you look at the fight 2 fights ago against Sean Woodson, he does come on later in the fight, you know, sometimes. You know, he has obviously had that early knockdown and then he kind of got outpaced by Lerone Murphy, but a lot of times he comes on later, right? And Costa fades. You know, Costa fades. He's in multiple fights. He's kind of faded now. Christian Rodriguez fight, he faded badly in round 3. In his debut, he faded against Thiago Moises, but, you know, it is what it is. Leg kicks, it was his debut. I don't think that's a great look, to be honest, but it was his debut, whatever. In his fight against Steve Garcia, he looked to fade a little bit. Again, that wasn't a great look. And I do get weird vibes from those 2 fights, and I can't get them out of my mind. I don't think they were just like anomalies. I don't want to say he has a quit in him. I won't say that for sure, but I'll say that there's still some poor tendencies. There's still something in my mind where I feel like if the fight goes left, this guy might lose. You know what I mean? If it starts to go downhill in a negative way for him. As I mentioned in the Christian Rodriguez fight, he faded round 3. In the Julian Erosa fight, it looked like he was slowing down. So I kind of feel like Ige might lose round 1, but then start to build in the midpoint of the fight. So yeah, this is a great fight, boys. Honestly, I do like this fight. I'm going to end up picking Ige in this one as the betting pick again, giving you guys where I believe the value is. I'm going to say Ige here because at the end of the day, man, he's been in there with the better fighters. I think he has way more power on the feet. I think he's much better in the pocket. And I think that Costa is going to get finished or going to get hurt one of these days, and it could be here. Ige has, again, just like Sean Strickland, Ige has all the tools to win this fight. Is he going to implement those tools this weekend? I don't think Costa's an easy fight. I'm not going to say that now. This isn't a home run spot for Ige, and it could very well be that Costa just is a better striker on the outside and he's able to run his footwork game and maybe get a couple of pivotal takedowns and jump on the back. That's something I could see here, Costa jumping on the back. Like Lopez, you know, I could see that. But overall, I am going to pick Ige as the betting side. I think that ultimately he gets a knockout in this one. That will be my official prediction. War 50k Ige. I got the Extreme Couture shirt on right now, so you know I have to rep Ige. And to be honest, boys, this card is littered with Extreme Couture fighters, so I got to rep one of the best gyms in the world, you know. Shout out Extreme and shout out Dan Ige. I think he gets it done this weekend. Next up, we got a heavyweight banger on tap. Serghei Spivac taking on Ante Delija. Spivac is coming into this fight with a record of 17 wins, 6 losses. Delija, on the other hand, 26 wins with 7 losses. Currently, they have Ante Delija, the -170 favorite, with the underdog price tag on Serghei Spivac coming back at +145 odds. So this is the only heavyweight fight on the entire card, and oftentimes what you get with heavyweights, guys, is brutal finishes early, round 1 knockouts, where everybody is like, damn, you know, like that Delija fight against Waldo Cortez Acosta. Or sometimes what you get is both guys getting a bit tired because they're big humans. They have to use a lot of cardio and energy and oxygen to pump blood around those muscles or those fat deposits, if we're talking about some other fighters. And then they get tired and they go into a sloppy fight, you know, and it's kind of like a laughing stock, like Taliesin Teixeira versus Tai Tuivasa. You know, so what one is this going to be? Honestly, looking at this fight stylistically, I kind of think it's going to be one or the other. You know, I think someone's getting nuked in the first round, someone's getting finished, or it's probably going to be a semi-sloppy fight back and forth that goes to a decision. You know, so first thing that comes to my mind is, I don't know if I agree with Delija being such a big favorite, or, you know, he's not such a big favorite, but I don't know if I agree with Delija being this level of a favorite, considering that if it gets out of 5 minutes, I think it's going to be semi back and forth. You know, there's many, many ways we can look at this fight, boys. One thing I want to say is that if someone does get a finish in round 1, I think more than likely it's going to be Delija, but Spivac can definitely finish in round 1 as well. We'll touch on him in a minute. I'd even go as far as saying Delija has more chance to finish in the first 2.5 minutes of round 1, but maybe Spivac has more of a chance to finish in the last 2.5 minutes of round one, meaning they both have a good chance of winning in the first round, or they both have an equal chance, but Delija is going to have his shot first. And the reason I say that is because every fight starts on the feet. We have seen Spivac blasted in round one a couple of times now, more than we've seen Delija blasted in round one, although we have seen it from Delija as well. Go back and look at that Waldo Cortez Acosta fight, which we'll touch on in a minute, because a lot of that fight was BS. But I do think that Delija is a lot more aggressive, has a lot more presence in the cage early, and has a lot more power on the feet. And every fight starts standing up. We don't start in a grappling position. So if we start standing up, Delija has more power, he's way faster on the feet, and he hits way harder. So he's going to have a lot of opportunities to knock Spivac out in round one. I believe that's the case, right? But if he doesn't get that early knockout, I could see Spivac tying him up, maybe getting a clinch trip takedown, a judo throw, something like that, getting on top. And I'll tell you this now, boys, Spivac is the better jiu-jitsu player in this matchup for sure. If Spivac gets on top, I'm not confident that someone like Ante Delija is going to survive. Can he do it? Yes. Will he do it? I don't know. It's to be seen. So I think this could be a tale of two fights. We could see that Spivac gets hurt early, but if he does weather the storm, he could then take down Delija and maybe finish him. Or, like I say, we could see the fight getting out of round one and maybe turning into a little bit of a sloppy fight. Delija gets a takedown, he stays in guard. Spivac is able to reverse him. He stays in guard or gets full mount but can't do enough damage. It's a close back and forth fight over 15 minutes. Overall, I have to side with Delija just because he has so much finishing upside early. We even saw that in the Waldo Cortez Acosta fight, which I'm going to touch on now, right? Obviously, he got knocked out in round one in that fight, but he knocked out Cortez Acosta in round one first. And then the review officials changed the result and they made the fight restart again. Ante Delija had this massive adrenaline dump and then ended up losing a fight via first round KO after just knocking out Waldo in round one. The fight shouldn't have been stopped initially because there was an eye poke. Waldo shouldn't have lost via KO round one, but he did lose via KO round one. You can't then restart the fight because Ante Delija is celebrating. His adrenaline has fully dropped and it's very hard to go back into a fight after your adrenaline has dropped. We see this time and time again. Look at Neal Magny versus Jake Matthews fight. We see this time and time again where a fighter's adrenaline dumps and they don't perform the same way. So it was very unlucky for Delija to suffer that fate. But on the same token, it would have been very unlucky for Waldo to receive that fate. I actually bet on Ante Delija in that fight as an underdog. I bet him, I think I might have even had a sprinkle on his KO or KO round one as well. But I definitely bet him as an underdog. And it was like the last bet on the card that we had completely crushed. I think me and the Elite Zone had won over 10 units on the card. And that was like our last bet. I didn't even know the fight got restarted because I just started celebrating as soon as Delija got the KO. There's actually a funny clip I posted up because I thought it was a KO. I'm going to post that clip now. Watch it along. You can laugh at me, laugh with me. I'll laugh at me as well.
Let's go. Ante Delija, cash me out. Ante Delija cashes me out. And that is another winning week. 12 weeks profitable. 12 weeks without 1 L. 3 months without 1 L. What you got to say now? No one does it like the boy. Boys, we lose. We just lost our bet on Ante Delija. I feel like I'm in a twilight zone. We won our bet. What the fuck? We won our bet and then we lost our bet in the same night. Boys, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
So there it is, boys. You deserve to laugh at me. I'll take that one on the chin. I started celebrating, giving it the big yap after, feeling myself because I had won a boatload of cash. So, I had to flex on the haters one time, but the haters called me on that one. Good one from the haters. Shout out to you, man. I kind of jumped the gun there. But that was a bit of a BS result, right? The thing is, though, we can't completely ignore that, right? Ante Delija still got knocked out badly. Yes, he shouldn't have been back in and fighting because his adrenaline dumped. But does it raise a question about his chin? Does it raise a question about his chin? He was also knocked out brutally in the PFL against Bruno Capoloza. He was also knocked out in round one against Valentin Moldovsky. So this guy can be run through in round one, just like Spivac can. So we have to just be careful saying Delija is the only one who can win in round one here. I think Spivac has a chance to win in round one as well. The under 1.5 rounds is plus money as I record this video. The limits are not fully open. Maybe that line changes when this video comes out. But currently, you're looking at plus money.
the worst it's going to be is minus 130, minus 140 when this video comes out anyway. And I don't mind that. Boys, I don't mind that. I think it's a decent shot because both fighters could win early. You also get the second half of round two, the first half of round two, the first half of the second round as well. So you get that extra 2.5 minutes insurance. I don't mind that play. I'm not saying I'm betting it myself. I'm going to take some time to think about it. I don't bet when the limits are so small anyway, because I'm not a fraud and scam decapper like all of these other fake sports bettors online. I don't tip lines to my guys in the elite zone. I don't tip these lines that no one can bet, right? So I'm going to wait. I'm going to make my decision in a couple of days when the limits open, and then I'll see what I want to bet. Currently, my prediction will be Ante Delija. It will be Ante Delija via KO in round one, and it will be a lean to the under 1.5 rounds. But I'm gonna take some time to think about this one, boys. Maybe I'll pass on the fight completely. It's definitely got weird vibes, but that's my prediction. You got my prediction. If you want the official play on the fight, the official bets, the official breakdown later on in the week, then you can sign up. The link is in the bio for that. But at the moment, my prediction will stay as what I've given it.
Boys, this video is brought to you by and sponsored by Lucrative James, me. Yes, I sponsor my own videos. I pay for my own videos. I pay for the editing to be done. I sponsor it all, right? And something I want to shout out is my group, the Elite Zone. In 2025, my private betting community, the Elite Zone, had one of its biggest years to date. People use the results to do real things in the real world, like go on trips, holidays around the world, take time off work, cover real world life expenses, and enjoy the sport without the stress. Take a look at some of these reviews from real people who are in my community, real comments. These are real results, boys. You cannot fake these. If you want the bets I place every single week, you can join on a weekly or a monthly plan. You get the official bets there. The link is in the bio for that. The Inner Circle gives you insider access into the room on fight nights and direct access to me and my private betting community. The Inner Circle is available in the yearly and lifetime packages only because we only want serious people in there. Both of those options are available on my website, sublaunch.com/lucrativemma. The link is also in the bio. You can pick what option suits you, and I'll see you on the inside, and we'll go back to cashing fat bags. Next up, we have a violent fight. Zach Reese versus Michel Pereira. Zach Reese coming into this fight with a record of 10 wins, 2 losses. Michel Pereira, on the other hand, you're talking like triple, quadruple the amount of fights with 31 wins and 14 losses. Michel Pereira is the slight minus 135 favorite, with the underdog price tag on Zach Reese coming back at plus 115. It's funny because this fight is kind of similar to the last one where I think someone probably dies in round one, but if they don't, we could see a very sloppy, weird back and forth fight that goes 15 minutes. So it's just pick your poison, you know. Is it going to finish in round one? Is someone getting slumped? Or is it going to be a strange fight where no one's really value and it goes 15 minutes? I personally think someone's going down in round one, just as I predicted for that last fight. I'm actually even a little bit more confident in this fight to go down in round one or to finish in round one, even though they're middleweights and they're, 60 pounds lighter than those heavyweight fighters I just mentioned. And the reason is very simple. I mean, Zach Reese and Michel Pereira, they're under machines. If you look at Zach Reese's run in the UFC, he's had 7 fights and 5 of them have gone under 1.5 rounds. Now, one of them was a no contest for transparency purposes, so you wouldn't have won your under 1.5 bet. You would have got a refund. But even if we remove that, we can say 4 out of 6 of his fights have gone under 1.5 rounds. 4 out of 6, 5 of 7, whatever you want to say. It's a lot of fights. A lot of fights have gone under 1.5 rounds because that's how the guy fights. And if we go and look at Michel Pereira, since moving to middleweight, 4 of his 6 fights have gone under 1.5 rounds. So the exact same record as Zach Reese, 4 and 6. So we're talking a very high probability that these guys have gone under in their UFC runs in this current weight class, and I kind of feel like it's going to happen again. Honestly, I feel like Michel Pereira has all the tools to win. It's a running theme throughout this card. I've said it with Ige, I've said it with Strickland. I honestly might not bet on any of them, right? But I do think that Michel Pereira is the same as Ige and Strickland, where they have the tools to win this. I just don't know where they're at this point in their career. I don't know what version we're getting of them. Michel Pereira was on a great run at middleweight. I mean, this guy finished Michel Oleksiejczuk in round 1. That is not easy, guys. It's not easy to do that. Michel is on a crazy run himself. He finished Andre Petroski, which is a little bit easier, but it's still a good win in round 1. Ihor Pereira, again, decent win in round 1. You know, he's finishing these guys like you should if you're anyone of note in the UFC. And then obviously he goes on a bit of a bad run. He fights Fluffy Hernandez, who is fighting Sean Strickland on this card. It will be fighting for the title if he wins, so we don't take that away from him. Then he has the worst performance of all time, and this is really where the red flags start to get raised. The worst performance of all time against Abbas Magomedov. You know, one of the worst fights in UFC history, on the same level as Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou, Rose Namajunas and Carla Esparza. This was of that same ilk. You know, so that's when the red flags start to get raised. And then he comes in as a -2 300 favorite against Carl Dorcas in his next fight, and he gets slumped in round 1. In the first minute of the fight, he gets put out, you know, which was very, very bad look in my opinion. So now we're sitting at it looking like, I don't know where Michel Pereira is. You know, once upon a time, he was this crazy force, 2023, 2024, but now he's getting slumped in round 1 by a guy who doesn't have a lot of punch power, and also he's not throwing any strikes in one of the worst performances in UFC history against Abbas Magomedov. So it's like, what Michel Pereira are we getting? Honestly, if we get a good Michel Pereira, he slumped Zach Reese in round 1, just like Cody Brundage did to him, you know, just like Bekoev did to him. He finishes Zach Reese in round 1 here. He's the much better fighter overall. He has the much better skill set. He's way faster. He's bigger. He has more tools in his arsenal. You know, he's just better in general. But I don't know where he's at in his career. Is his chin completely going? Does he have any confidence after having 2 back-to-back of the worst performances in UFC history? I don't know. Zach Reese is going to go out there and give it his all. I know that. Zach Reese is going to have confidence. I know that. Zach Reese is going to push a pace. I know that. He's going to fight for my money even if he loses. I know that. I don't know that with Michel Pereira. You know, I don't know that. This is a whirlwind fight, boys. Any fighter can win. Most likely someone's going to win in round 1. Ultimately, I will pick Michel Pereira just because he's got so many more tools than Zach Reese. On the feet, he's way more dynamic. He has way better kicks. He honestly has way better dynamic strikes like flying knees, even Superman punches. He's way faster. He has way more power. In my opinion, he's way more physical. He's bigger. He's way more athletic. Like, I just feel like he has more tools to win, but I do trust Zach Reese later in the fight, to be honest, which is crazy because Zach Reese is an early front runner. I just, for some reason, I just can't trust Michel Pereira if he doesn't get an early finish. But I will pick him to get an early finish just because I think if he comes back to the form, like if they're both in their best form, he probably just finishes Zach Reese early. You know, like he's fought the better competition. He's beat the better competition. I mean, we're talking about a guy who has beat Nico Price in Nico Price's prime, which I'm not saying is a great win, but it's a better win than Zach Reese got, right? Beat Santiago Ponzinibbio, Chaos Williams, Michel Oleksiejczuk, Andre Petroski, Andre Fialho. And then on the other hand, you got Zach Reese, whose best win is Dusko Todorovic, a guy who did beat Michel on the regional scene. But outside of that, who has he beat? He's beat no one. And Dusko's not a great win, nowhere near as a great win as some of the fighters who I just mentioned on Michel Pereira's record, you know? So who is he beating? Jackson McVeigh, you know? Who else? Jose Medina? Julian Marquez, I guess, you know, with an early finish. It's like the resumes are uncomparable. The level of competition is uncomparable. And Michel has the styles to just get an early finish. So I'm going to predict Michel Pereira to win this fight in round 1. But it's a very volatile fight. If anything, I'd look for the under 1.5 rounds as another pick. And I'm going to give that out as the betting value side here. Currently, it's at a very good price. I don't know where the price will be when limits open. But I like the under 1.5 rounds in this fight. Michel Pereira to win in round 1. Michel Pereira money line like that. Those are my predictions in terms of where the betting value lies. I think it's more in the violence side. I'll have a think when limits open, as always, when the market opens up for me, and I'll make my decision on where I'm going to place my money. Another violent fight in Chidi Njokuani taking on Carlos Leal. Njokuani coming into this fight with a record of 25 wins and 11 losses. Carlos Leal, on the other hand, 22 wins, 7 losses. So fairly similar record for these guys. You got Carlos Leal sitting as the -180 favorite with the underdog price tag on Chidi Njokuani sitting at +155 odds. This is an amazing fight, guys. Absolute banger. Carlos Leal is somebody who is pace and pressure and power and physicality personified. This guy is going to walk forward into range and land massive strikes just like he is doing here to Alex Morono. Just walking forward to Alex Morono and having complete disregard and disrespect for anything that Alex is throwing back at him and just landing hellacious blows. And Alex did very well to survive a couple of minutes of this fight until the ref ended up waving it off. The issue with that type of style, though, is it puts yourself in danger. You know, so as we see here, he walks forward into range against Muslim Salikov and bang, you know, bang, he gets murked because he's walked forward into range with his hands down, complete disregard from anything his opponent's throwing back, and he gets caught with a beautiful shot over the top, and he gets put unconscious. And interestingly, boys, that was his first time being knocked out in his professional career. It was honestly crazy to me. I bet on Carlos Leal inside the distance there. I lost my bet there. As always, boys, I'll tell you my losses just like I tell you my wins. I lost a bet there, and I was so surprised. I did not think that would happen. Carlos Leal, one of the most durable fighters I've ever watched, never been knocked out in, I think, going up to that fight, he's 22-7 now, so he's 22-6. So you're speaking about 28 fights, and he had never been knocked out. I think amateur he'd never been knocked out as well. I need to double check that. So this guy, you're talking about 30 fights, he'd never been knocked out. But it happens when you fight like that. And now he's fighting someone who can do the same in Chidi Njokuani. Chidi Njokuani has some of the best knees in the business. Look at this knee he lands, an intercepting knee when Rodriguez is moving forward. Look at this beautiful knee he lands here. I mean, that's the exact type of thing he could do to Carlos Leal, who kind of looks like Rodriguez, who is another bald head Brazilian as well. Like, why can't we see that happen again here? We see Chidi knock out Marc-Andre Barriault here, you know, brutal knockout. And he slumped him early. Like, I could see Carlos Leal employing the same game plan as he always has done and gets caught and knocked out in round one again. Back-to-back knockouts in round one, which is crazy because someone like Carlos Leal, you thought this guy maybe never would get knocked out because his chin is so elite. But it happens when you have that style, you know. Nobody goes never being knocked out with that type of style. It just doesn't happen. If you take punishment in the UFC or in MMA, you're eventually going to get knocked out. Now, there's many different layers to this fight, boys, and I could break it down forever. But I'm going to try and give you just the most pertinent points, the most important points, so we're not here forever. I could make a 30-minute video on this alone, believe you me. And I think if you've been watching me long enough, you know that. You know, I can speak about fights in depth. I do it as a full-time income. It's easy for me to do so. I'm trying to chop the most important points down to give you as much value as possible. And something I do want to mention in this fight, and that is important, is that Carlos Leal, in my opinion, is going to go to the grappling in this fight. Why do I say that? Because this guy's a pure striker. He's a knockout artist, right? Well, the reason I say he's going to go to the grappling is because when we saw him fight another guy similar to Chidi Njokuani, what I mean is very tall for the weight class, 6'3", 6'4", very rangy, good kicks. We saw him fight Sadibou twice. He lost both times to Sadibou, and he had a very hard time in both fights closing distance. He couldn't do it. And I think that in this fight, he may have a hard time closing distance. So what he did in the Sadibou fight, not in both of them, but in one of them, for the most part, he grappled heavily in that fight. He tried to get takedowns. He tried to take him down. And I think that's what he might do in this fight. You know, Chidi Njokuani does not have the footwork of Sadibou. I will say that. I don't think he's going to be able to bounce around on the outside of the octagon as much as Sadibou did. But I still do think he can have some success with it. Staying at range, eating him up with the kicks, the high kicks, the teeps. Chidi is very good at range, you know, and Carlos Leal may have trouble closing distance. If he does, he's going to try and close distance with the grappling and not the striking, you know, because he may not be able to get to him with his short and stocky arms and fists and boxing, right? So if he tries to grapple, that opens up a completely new dynamic of the fight. One thing we can say about Chidi Njokuani is he's not a great grappler. You know, I don't think Chidi is a great grappler. What I do think Chidi is good at doing, though, is staying safe at times, reverse in position. And we have seen Carlos Leal reversed by Sadibou and other fighters in his career. So why can't someone like Chidi Njokuani do that? Now, as I was doing my research for this fight, I found out that Carlos Leal had suffered a cut on his chin and he had to get some sutures. So, look, I don't think that's really going to affect the fight, but this happened 3 weeks ago, by the way. So it's just something to note. You know, if he's grappling a lot, the friction could cut it open. Maybe we see blood pouring out. This is going to look good in the judge's eyes for Chidi. Now, these are small things, but sometimes these things do add up. Something else I realized is that Carlos Leal is still in Brazil at the time of this video. I'm recording this video about 3-4 days before you see it on your screens. We need to take time for the editing and to make it as entertaining as possible for all of you. I hope you appreciate the entertainment as well, but it does take a little bit longer to get the video out based on that. So maybe he is in Brazil now, but as I'm doing my research, 1.5 weeks out from the fight, he's still not in Vegas. He's still in Brazil, so it takes some time to acclimatize, etc., etc. So, you know, I'm not loving the preparation from Carlos Leal in that sense. But like I said, it's probably not going to have a big effect on the fight. Just more information I always want to give to you guys. But I do think he's going to grapple here. I don't know if he's going to be successful. Something that I want to mention as well is that Chidi Njokuani has a massive weight cut. You know, he's moved down to 170 pounds. He was a career 185 pounder. He's recently moved down to 170 pounds. Looks really good at 170 pounds. But obviously, he's cutting a lot of weight because he's a massive man, you know. So since he's cutting all that weight, what can happen is that you can actually drain yourself too much to where you start to get tired earlier than you usually would because your oxygen system isn't as proficient. But also, you can start to get hurt. You know, you drain all of the fluid to your brain and you start to get hurt a little bit more. And one thing you don't want to do is get hurt against Carlos Leal because that guy will swarm you. He is an elite finisher and he has elite power and bricks for hands. So I would not be surprised to see Carlos Leal walk forward into range, have disregard for Chidi's shots, take Chidi's shots and knock out Chidi. That is definitely a possibility here. But one thing I also want to say is if Carlos Leal does that, he puts himself at danger for Chidi's most powerful weapons, which is the clinch strikes, right? If you close distance into that boxing range, Chidi now has a chance to grab you, Muay Thai clinch you, pummel, and he's going to unload elbows and knees. Chidi's best attribute is his elbows and knees and his Muay Thai clinch. He is so elite with his Muay Thai clinch. Do not be surprised if Carlos Leal is looking good in range, landing shots, and Chidi lands a brutal elbow, a brutal knee up the middle. That hurts Carlos Leal. So very intriguing fight. Path to victories for both guys. You know, Carlos Leal has the grappling upside. We have to speak about that. I do think Chidi could potentially have some success reversing him, getting back up to his feet, but he does have the grappling upside. He has the power in the hands upside, and I don't know who has the durability upside. I like to say Carlos Leal, but I also feel like Chidi has a chance to get a knockout in this fight. I really do. So I'm actually going to pick the underdog in this one, boys. I'm going to overall pick Chidi Njokuani. I'm actually going to pick him via KO in round 1 as well, which is, you know, going back to the well on Carlos Leal's last fight. I don't think it's going to be a popular pick because he is the underdog, but I do like Chidi to get the win here. I think he's got a good style to potentially nullify some of Carlos Leal's best weapons, which is their close distance striking. I think Chidi is very good with his clinch. Now, if he gets stuck at boxing range where he can't get close enough for the clinch, but he can't get far enough away for the kicks, then Carlos Leal most likely is going to run him over because he is much better with his pocket boxing. But I think Chidi has tools enough to potentially, you know, finish this fight early. I will say Chidi can be a little bit fragile at times. You know, he can, you know, have the fight won and then lose, like against Gregory Rodriguez. That wasn't a good one. You know, against Michel Oleksiejczuk, he kind of semi-quit in that fight as well. So it can happen. Michel's Oleksiejczuk fight is kind of a very similar matchup to he has here, and he did win. He did lose that fight. He got finished, but overall, I'm going to actually pick Chidi Njokuani in this fight. Next fight, we have a flyweight banger, Ode Osbourne taking on Alibi Idiris. Idiris coming into this fight as the -150 favorite with the underdog price tag on Ode Osbourne sitting at +130. Great flyweight fight. Flyweight is my favorite weight division. Flyweight is my weight, violence weight, just because these guys, you know, they land so many cool shots. They demonstrate and execute mixed martial arts as the highest level because they're so light, they can execute MMA at a high level because they never get tired. Their cardio is unlimited a lot of the time, not all of the time. Ode Osbourne doesn't have unlimited cardio, but you know, a lot of fighters in that weight class do. They're just very high level mixed martial artists. You know, they're super flexible because they're small, etc., etc. They don't weigh so much, so they're faster. You know, all of these type of things. And this is a great fight, boys. You know, honestly, this fight, I'm leaning semi-heavily to Idiris here. And the reason is because Ode Osbourne has struggled throughout his entire career with grappling. And I believe Idiris can go to his grappling here and get the job done based on that. Ode is not a bad fighter. In fact, Ode is a very good fighter. He almost beat Steve Erceg in his last fight. He hurt Steve Erceg. But what did Steve Erceg do? He resorted to the grappling, was able to win the fight via grappling. You know, if you go back the fight before that, which was his fight against Ronaldo Rodriguez, Lazy Boy, he hurt Ronaldo, but what happened? Again, he succumbed, just like the Steve Erceg fight, he succumbed to the grappling. He succumbed to Lazy Boy being able to control him, you know, and I think that it's going to come to bite him again. Idiris trains with Asu Amabayev all the time, and considering Asu took Ode down multiple times, was able to control him for that fight and ultimately snatch up a submission, I think Idiris will go in there with not the same game plan because he is more of a striker. He likes to throw dynamic shots on the feet. You know, he has good power striking, but I think that he would take what his teammate did and use it to his advantage, which is mixing the grappling, you know, especially because Ode presents a problem for a lot of strikers even Steve Erceg, who's a good striker, because he's so fast on the feet, he's so dynamic, he has a lot of power, and that's going to combat Idiris's some of his best attributes, which is the speed, the dynamicism, the fast twitch muscle fibers that allow him to bounce in and out of range and throw these flying knees and throw these, spinning back shots that he throws and these Superman shots. And he's a very wild striker. He's a very good striker, to be honest, very dynamic. But I think Ode's speed is going to throw him off a little bit. So he will resort to the second game plan, which will be grappling. And he will take a lot of what Asu has taught him in that fight and in the camp. And I think ultimately he is a better grappler than Ode, and he will be able to bank top time and honestly maybe even win via submission. I've seen him slam people on their head very aggressively. I've seen him land big elbows from top position, and I've seen him hunt submissions. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets one here. I don't know if it's a decision or a submission win, but I am going to pick Idiris in this fight. I'm saying it's not a home run win because he did have a poor performance in his debut. He did fight Joseph Morales, who's probably going to fight for a UFC title at some point. That's how good Morales is, honestly. He just ran through Schnell. He's going to probably fight a top 5 guy soon. So I don't think there's any shame in that. But at the end of the day, we don't know his true level. He did lose his debut, got dominated, got finished. I was able to watch that live and I was kind of shocked with the ease of how he got beat there. So we have to just pump the brakes a little bit. But I do think he's a legit fighter. I think he's a legit prospect in the division even. And I think he will go on to have a solid career. Maybe even like Asu Almabayev to some degree. Almabayev never's going to fight for the title, but he might be in like a title eliminator, or maybe he might be ranked 6 or 7. I could see that happening for Idiris. I do think he's pretty high level, man. Could certainly see him get ranked in the top 15. I mean, we got people like Charles Johnson in the top 15, Bruno Silva, Tagir Ulanbekov. I definitely think he can compete with those guys, potentially get some wins over them, be ranked in the top 15. And if that is the case, he should beat Ode Osbourne here, so I'm going to pick him to win. I'm going to pick him to win via finish, actually. I think Ode can be hurt on the feet, and I also think he can be submitted, So I think based on the style of the Kazakh fighter Idiris, he's going to get a finish, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm predicting a finish from Idiris. I don't know whether it's KO or submission. I'll say submission just because it could be a club and sub, just as it could be a sub. But I could see a KO as well. So yeah, finish by Idiris for me. Back-to-back flyweight matchups, as next we have Alden Coria taking on Lucas Gurule. Very similar record for these guys. Coria has an 11 win and 3 loss record, with Gurule having a 10 win and 2 loss record. Currently, they have Alden Coria sitting as a big favorite, minus 255 odds, with the underdog price tag on Luis Gurule sitting at plus 215. This is a very, very good fight, boys. So first of all, I need to shout out to Alden Coria because this guy cashed me in the Elite Zone a plus 300 ticket against Alessandro Costa in his last fight. It was his UFC debut. He came in to fight Alessandro Costa as a plus 300 underdog, and he bossed the fight, really. Yes, there were some sweaty moments in that fight. Alessandro Costa took his back at one point, but Coria stayed smart, stayed solid, and ended up getting a finish in round 3. Very, very impressive performance, in my opinion. He is a very good fighter and someone we have to watch in this division. Now, on the other hand, we have Luis Gurule. This guy has let me down before, so I bet on him as a plus 150 underdog in his Dana White Contender Series fight, and he won that fight, so he won us some money. But then I bet on him again in his debut, because I honestly thought he would beat Ode Osbourne fairly soundly. He got knocked out, right? So it raised a few red flags there. In his last fight, I just passed on the fight against Jesus Aguilar. He didn't look great in that fight. He looked like he was a little bit shook up from that defeat that he took to Ode Osbourne in the fight before that. And on top of that, he was a little bit more hesitant. He got hurt in that fight as well, which isn't good. That's 2 fights back to back in the UFC. You've been hurt now. One fight you got knocked out in. Another fight, it lost you the round and it lost you the fight. So it's this guy has a dodgy chin. Outside of that, he's a very good fighter, man. Luis Gurule is a very good all-round fighter. I can't look at him and say, this is a massive liability, vulnerability, negative for him. I can't say that. The guy is basically good everywhere. He's a good grappler, good takedowns, good timing, honestly, good fight IQ. His power could do with some work, but he's got good volume, good pace, good pressure, great cardio, great anti-wrestling. I mean, the guy's basically good everywhere. Yeah, he could do with a bit more power and a bit of a better chin, but for the most part, the guy's super well-rounded. I could say the same for Alden Coria. Honestly, this guy's a very good striker and a very good grappler. I also feel like he can be hurt a little bit as well. So they're honestly similar fighters to me. And I don't see a world in which this fight isn't going to be close. I think this fight's going to be very close. The only issue is I really think that Gurule is going to get hurt at some point. I could just see it happening. I could also see Coria jumping on his back because I think Coria is a very good grappler. Coria hasn't had a full training camp for this one. He only found out about this fight 7 weeks ago, according to an interview that I watched of him. He also has known about Gurule for a long time, though. Gurule fought 2 of his training partners back in the day, and he beat both of them. So he spoke about wanting to get revenge in this interview, but he also knows a lot about him, can take a lot from his opponents because they've already stylistically trained for Gurule more than once. The camp as a whole they've game planned for him. So I think that will help him to some degree here. Of course, more information is better than no information. I think the fight's going to be close though, boys. Like stylistically, these guys are very good. I just feel like at some point, Coria is going to hurt him. Coria is going to hurt him, maybe with an uppercut like he did against Alessandro Costa, or maybe he's going to be able to jump on his back, ride out around by taking his back, maybe even get a submission in. I do think Gurule has very good submission defense and just grappling defense in general, but Coria is the more dangerous one on the ground by far. I think Gurule is maybe the better wrestler. I'm not sure. I need to do more tape, but I do think Coria is the more dangerous submission artist. So I don't know, man. It's a very tough fight for me because we got Coria as a very big favorite, right? But then I do think that even though he's not going to look like a favorite, I think he might end up finishing the fight. And so then your bet loses if you bet on Gurule. So it's a tough one for me, boys. As always, I'm trying to make the distinction between my predictions and where I believe the betting value is. There could be some value on Gurule here. Maybe Coria is overvalued, but I can't get out of my head that he's going to get finished at some point. And it's crazy because I said the exact same thing to all of my Elite Zone. I didn't make a public video of this because it was a PFL and I don't break PFL down publicly. But I said this to all of my guys in the Elite Zone when I broke down the fight between Shamil Musayev and Kuramagomedov. We bet the over 2.5 rounds there at plus money. And I was very close to betting Kuramagomedov, and I said he's going to be value, but I think ultimately he's going to get finished. I was scared away by the knockout in rounds 4 and round 5, even though I knew he was value. So I didn't bet him. And then what happens? He dominates a lot of the fight. Does fade. I was correct in that. He did fade, but he didn't get knocked out. So it might be one of those ones where Luis Gurule maybe gets hurt, but doesn't get knocked out, but he gets hurt in round 3, but he already won the first 2 rounds, Or maybe he just doesn't get hurt at all, maybe he just doesn't get hurt this time. It's always tough, boys. I'm trying to distinguish between where the value is, but what I'm actually predicting to happen. I'm actually predicting Coria to get the finish here. I'm predicting him to catch Gurule. Maybe he might be down on the scorecards. So maybe I'll look for instead of a Coria moneyline play, maybe I'll look for a Coria inside the distance play. Maybe I'll look for a Gurule moneyline play. I haven't locked any bets in for this one yet, but that's my breakdown. I think there's value on Gurule moneyline easily. I think if you play Gurule moneyline, maybe if you get a better price for Gurule decision, you play that one. If you like the Coria side, I think probably better to play inside the distance than moneyline, even though decision is probable. I think you could get a lot more value on the inside the distance play. So those are a few angles I would take, boys. That's my overall thoughts on the matchup. Hopefully it helps you make your pick. My official prediction, Coria to win inside the distance, but maybe my betting value side may lean to Gurule. I'm going to take some more time to think about what I want to do with this one, if I want to make any bets at all. And then I'll make my predictions, send it out to the Elite Zone. Here we have the one and only rematch on the card, and it's in the women's bantamweight division. Nora Cornolle taking on Joselyne Edwards, the much improved Joselyne Edwards. Last time Nora Cornolle won via split decision, very controversial split decision in our hometown of France. And she is coming into this fight with a record of 9 wins and 3 losses. Joselyne Edwards has a record of 16 wins with 6 losses. The market also believes it was a very controversial loss because Joselyne Edwards is sitting as the massive minus 275 favorite with the underdog price tag on Nora Cornolle coming back at plus 235 odds. Right, so as I said, boys, this is a rematch of a fight that was one of the biggest robberies of the year, in my opinion. Back in 2024, Joselyne Edwards beat Nora Cornolle fairly easily, and somehow she got awarded a loss. Cornolle got awarded that fight via split decision. But if we take a closer look at that fight, it was in France, right? Which is Cornolle's home country. So a bit of hometown robbery, that's what happened there. It was actually a unanimous decision, not even a split decision, which I thought it was a split decision. I think because it was such a clear win for Joselyne Edwards, in my opinion, it should have been a split. You know what I mean? Like, how can they award that a unanimous? Like, every judge thought Joselyne lost. Like, at least one should think she won. All should think she won, but at least one. That's what I mean by should have been a split. So yeah, like I kind of feel like the wrongs get right? Jesus. The wrongs get right here. I kind of feel like the wrongs get right. And I think that Joselyne Edwards gets her revenge and gets her win that she should have got all them years ago. 2 years ago. You know, I think that's what happens here. Joselyne Edwards, in my opinion, has the striking upside. She's improved so much now. I had a max bet on Joselyne Edwards not too long ago. I bet on Joselyne Edwards almost every single fight these days because she's just so much improved, and it's clear improvements from fight to fight. She dominated Nora with the grappling in her last fight when they fought. I think she can do it again, but I also think she can do even better on the feet now. I think she can honestly even finish Cornolle. I will say that Nora is a very tough girl. It's not easy to finish her, but I wouldn't put it past Joselyne to get a finish here. Ultimately, I'll pick Joselyne with ease here. She is a big favorite, but I do understand why. In my opinion, Nora needs another robbery to win this fight. Very intriguing fight up next with Ramiz Brahimaj taking on Punahele Soriano. Brahimaj coming into this fight with a record of 13 wins, 5 losses. Soriano, on the other hand, very similar record with 12 wins and 2 losses. 1 less win and 1 less loss. Just like the records, the odds are very similar. We have Brahimaj as the minus 130 favorite, with Soriano sitting at a plus 110 underdog. This is really good matchmaking by the UFC. Very excited to watch this one. I'm going to be rooting for Puna. I've seen Puna around the UFC PI. I had some chats with him. I like Puna, you know, so I'm always going to be rooting for him. But it's definitely not an easy matchup for him. Both guys are on a resurgence in the UFC. That's why I think it's great matchmaking. It's a very hard fight to pick. You know, the line is about a pick'em, and both fighters are on a win streak. Both fighters are very similar in the fact that they've won their last 3 fights. They're both on a 3-fight win streak. They've had some resurgence since they've come back. Puna obviously dropped down weight class, looks very solid at 170, good wrestler, got some good wins on his record already, knockout over Uros Medic, which is a great win, dominant performance against Nikolai Veretennikov, which is a pretty good win in and of itself as well. So yeah, like he's dominating both of those 2 fighters. They're good fighters. Brahimaj, on the other hand, comes through as an underdog against Austin Vanderford, comes through as an underdog against Billy Ray Goff, comes through as an underdog against Mickey Gall, and now he's a favorite, right? He's plus 120 Mickey Gall, plus 300 against Billy Ray Goff, and then plus 250 or something against Austin Vanderford. So the bookmakers was not respecting this guy, and now everyone has to respect him because not only did he win those fights, he finished every single one of them. You know, he has an elite front choke series. We've seen that from day one. He has very good grappling, solid jiu-jitsu. If he can get on top of you, which he doesn't have the best wrestling, but if he can get you down, he will dominate you on the ground. He's very, very good at submitting you early. You know, his last fight was the one fight where he kind of showed some ability to win a little bit later in the fight. It was still under 1.5 rounds, but it was, you know, 2.5 minutes into round 2. So that's like semi-progression in his game. Honestly, his striking is looking way better these days. If you go back to when he first came into the UFC, if you go back to the fights against Court McGee and stuff like that 3-4 years ago, his striking looks very rudimentary. He's looking way better on the feet these days. Punahele Soriano has always been a powerhouse on the feet. He can knock anyone out on his day. Very, very huge power in his hands. The issue is if you can just stay at range, stay away from the power, he doesn't have too much nuance to his game. You know, he's not really setting things up beautifully outside of the couple of setups he has. I think like his striking IQ isn't the highest. He's become a wrestler these days, that type of thing. He's not really striking at the highest level. So it's going to be interesting for me to see the striking here. I kind of feel like Ramiz is the better striker, but Punahele hits harder. Who's more durable? Probably Ramiz. I don't really know. They're both durable. You know, they're both not easy to finish. Punahele dropping down weight class may harm him a little bit. You know, it may be easier to finish here. So the striking is going to be weird. I think Ramiz is going to win the striking over 15 minutes, but I think Punahele can knock him out early or hurt him early. You know, so he'll win the striking in round 1 or at least half of round 1 or some parts of round 1. Or at least he has the ability to do it. Grappling-wise, I think the better wrestler is Punahele Soriano all day, so he can dictate where the fight takes place. But he's probably going to want to get takedowns, because if he doesn't, I think Ramiz is going to win on the feet. So if he does get takedowns, he could maybe stay safe on top. But then you go into Ramiz's wheelhouse, which is you're putting your head into front chokes, because Soriano ain't doing trip takedowns and judo throws. Soriano is shooting single legs and double legs. And those are the positions where you put your head in to get front choked by an elite submission artist in Ramiz Brahimaj. So I'm going to have to pick Ramiz Brahimaj here. I'm going to be rooting for Puna, and he can win the fight. It's a closely lined fight. But I have to pick Ramiz, man, because I feel like on the feet, he's going to win over 15. And if it isn't on the feet, he's got better jiu-jitsu. You know, so he's going to win the jiu-jitsu positions. There is a world in which Puna just drills front headlock defense so well that he's able to take Ramiz down with his much better wrestling credentials, wrestling skill set, and stay safe in guard or from top position or from side control and avoid the front headlocks. That is possible. But I think Ramiz is so good at them that I trust him to get the submission or reverse and get on top more than I trust Puna to survive. If I knew that Puna was going to shoot takedowns as a game plan, I would predict Ramiz to reverse him or submit him. So I don't know whether that is the game plan, but I think if it is, he's going to lose more often than not. But I also feel like he's got better cardio than Ramiz to some degree. And Ramiz gasses out in every fight that goes after 1.5 minutes. So that's another dynamic to the fight. And that's why I think the line is so close. Ultimately, I'm going to pick Ramiz to get one of his front headlocks. If Puna does decide to wrestle, he's going to put himself in danger. So overall, I have to pick Ramiz based on that. By the way, boys, I have a free Telegram channel where I give out free betting picks every single week. Sometimes I give out multiple different parlays. Sometimes I just give out one of my favorite picks. Whatever it may be, I give out a bunch of things in my free Telegram group, including giveaways. I do cash giveaways. You can join that for free right now. The link is in the bio. If you want my official bets, as you know, that website is sublaunch.com/lucrative MMA. That's obviously where the real cheddar is made. But I definitely say, regardless of what you do, sign up for the free Telegram. Next fight in the card, we have UFC newcomer Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani taking on Phil Rowe. Lebosnoyani coming into this fight fresh of a crazy Dana White's Contender Series KO, and he has a record of 9 wins, 2 losses. Phil Rowe, on the other hand, UFC veteran at this point, coming off a very disappointing, dominated performance against Sukyan Ko, where he lost 30-27. He has a record of 11 wins, 6 losses. Currently, they have Lebosnoyani as the -185 favorite on his debut against Phil Rowe, who is sitting as a +160 underdog. So like I said, boys, Jean-Paul went a little bit viral for a beautiful knockout that got Dana White going crazy in his Contender Series debut. And, you know, he's on a complete different career trajectory than someone like Phil Rowe. I don't want to say Phil Rowe's at the end of his career, but I'm going to say that Phil Rowe's at the end of his career. He's 35 years old. He has a record of 2 wins and 3 losses in his last 5 fights, dating back to 2022. You know, he's only fought 5 times in the last 4 years. And I just feel like he ain't got that many years left in him. Could he continue? Yes. It's not like he looks worse each time out. He looks like the same fighter. I'm not going to say Phil Rowe has regressed. I just feel like when you've been fighting for such a long time and, you know, you're on like a 50-50 record in the UFC these days and you're 35 years old, it's like, how long have you really got left? Jean-Paul, on the other hand, this guy's fresh blood in the UFC. But it's always a risk taking a debut against a UFC veteran who's been there, done it, fought better competition than you by far, beat better competition, you know, come back, gritted out, tough fights and got late comeback finishes like he's done against multiple fighters. It's not an easy debut for Jean-Paul. Honestly, boys, I'm going to be fully honest with this one. I want to do more tape study on this one. I haven't researched this as much as I want to, and I don't want to give you guys like a guesstimate prediction. I'm telling you now that 99% of the channels out there who predict fights don't watch tape study like me. You know, they just remember what they remember and then just give out their prediction based on what they remember. You know this because if you listen to them, some of the stuff they say is just completely not true because their memories are flawed, right? Obviously, everyone can make mistakes, but you get what I'm trying to say. I actually watch a lot of tape study before these breakdowns because I'm not just making them for YouTube like most people. I'm making them for my actual real world income that pays my bills. So I have to tape study, you know what I mean? I have to research. And I haven't done a lot of tape study for this one. So I'm not going to give you an ultimate prediction. I'm going to tell you who I think wins, right? Just based on now. But maybe that changes in the future when I've actually done my full research on the fight. At the moment, I'm going to take Jean-Paul. I feel like he's got the grappling upside in this fight because Phil Rowe's opponents always have the grappling upside. I think his striking style, his movement, his in and out movement can pose some issues for Phil Rowe, who kind of likes you to stand in front of him and trade so he can land those very good long-range boxing shots. And like I said, Phil Rowe's probably on a bit of a down trajectory. So I like Jean-Paul to get it done here. Probably via decision because Phil Rowe is a tough guy. Even when he's hurt, he still pushes through like the Gabriel Green fight or many other fights. Angelusa, he was getting kind of dominated, but he pushed through. So I'll pick Jean-Paul via decision here. But like I said, I do want to do a lot more tape study on this one. And maybe I'll do like another video, a short form or something, breaking down this fight in detail. Or maybe, or not maybe, I definitely will put it out on my Elite Zone. The link is in the bio for that. But right now, we'll say Jean-Paul via decision. Next up, we have Yaida Del Valle versus Jordan Leavitt. Now, Del Valle is fresh off his win over Isaac Dolgarian, which was subsequently investigated by the FBI for match fixing on the Dolgarian side, who was then cut, not the Del Valle side. Del Valle went in and did what he had to do. He is a 10-0 prospect, so the only fighter on this entire card who has never lost an MMA fight. He's taking on Jordan Leavitt, who has a record of 12 wins and 3 losses. Currently, they have Del Valle as a big minus 320 favorite with the underdog price tag on. Jordan Leavitt sitting at plus 270 odds. So as I said, boys, this is going to be a semi-hyped up second fight of the night just because of what happened in Yaida Del Valle's last fight. So if you didn't know, I won't beat the drum to death because it's been spoken about a lot, but he was involved in a fight with Isaac Dolgarian, which was basically flagged for match fixing. It was a fixed fight in the UFC on the Isaac Dolgarian side. Allegedly, the FBI are still investigating it, but the UFC did cut Isaac Dolgarian. I think that tells you a lot what you need to know. And so Yaida Del Valle gained some hype after that. I think Yaida Del Valle is a very good fighter. I'll say that. And I said that there. I didn't bet Isaac Dolgarian in that fight. I did bet the over 2.5 rounds. Obviously, I still stand by that being a good bet. Nothing showed me it wouldn't. I mean, it was a complete fixed fight, right? Like the round 1 Yaida Del Valle line got smashed. Boys, if you didn't know how deep this goes, loads of money came in on Yaida Del Valle to win in round 1 of that fight right before the fight started. And then he literally won in round 1. So yeah, it's kind of crazy because Isaac had never been finished and, you know, he was a big favorite and stuff like that. But if there's no dodginess going on here, which it won't be because it wasn't on the Del Valle side, I think the Del Valle will run through Jordan Leavitt. You know, I think that these guys are on completely different trajectories in MMA. I think these guys have completely different skill sets. You know, Jordan Leavitt is a decent fighter if you have no idea what you're doing in the jiu-jitsu, like Matt Sales, for example, or Kurt Hollabauer, who has kind of been exposed in the grappling in recent years. But Yaida Del Valle is a legit grappler, boys. He's a legit grappler. Now, he does make some mistakes. You know, watching his tape, it's kind of infuriating the amount of times that he gets taken down and jumps guillotine. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Leavitt gets a takedown in round 1 here, but I don't see him finishing someone like Yaida Del Valle. Del Valle is a very tough guy. He's been through adversity before. He's a very solid fighter. He's been in bad positions, reversed, found his way up to the top position. And I think that's what he does here. I honestly feel like Jordan Leavitt probably does get a takedown in round 1 just because he's very aggressive with it. He only has one style. He pushes it all the time. And Yaida Del Valle can be taken down, you know, but I think that after round 1 and even in round 1, I think Yaida Del Valle will probably reverse, get on top, start to punish him on the feet, make Jordan Leavitt desperate, and probably submit him himself, just like Chase Hooper did, just like Paddy Pimblett did, just like anyone can do if they have cardio and decent knowledge of jiu-jitsu. Now, something worth mentioning here is that Jordan Leavitt is cutting weight and moving down in weight class to the featherweight division here. I don't think that's necessarily going to be good for him. Maybe maybe he's more physical and he's going to be able to use his takedown game better. Maybe it helps his cardio because he was just a fat guy not training up at lightweight. But more than likely, it's going to hurt, you know, his gas issues probably even more. That's what usually happens. It doesn't always happen, but more often than not, it does hurt your gas tank. It usually hurts your durability as well. So I just feel like Del Valle, he's just so much better than Jordan Leavitt. You know, I honestly feel like this fight could be lined even wider. And I've got Yaida Del Valle to win this fight cleanly. And I've got him to win this fight inside the distance. Submission or TKO, I'll go with another submission. I'll go with a submission loss. So yeah, Yaida Del Valle via submission in round 1 or round 2. It's my official prediction. Next up, we have Carly Judice versus Juliana Miller. The two least experienced fighters on the entire card are facing off against each other. Carly Judice has a record of 5 wins, 2 losses. Juliana Miller, 4 wins and 3 losses. Carly Judice sitting as a massive minus 500 favorite, which makes her the biggest favorite on the entire fight card. Juliana Miller is holding the underdog price tag of plus 385 odds. Amazing fight for the first fight of the night because my girl Carly Judice is in the fight. I love Carly. She's cashed me big bags. I had a max bet on her in her last fight against Nicole Cagliari and also bet on her to win in round 3. I mean, boys, we've been killing the round 3 props in the last few months. We had Kong Wang via submission in round 3 at 50-1 odds, 40-1 odds, which almost cashed. We had Cagliari to get beat in round 3 by Judice. We had Julia Palastri to win via KO in round 3 against Carolina Karolina Kowalkiewicz that cashed. Melissa Croden to beat Lisboa in round 3. Like, these women's MMA round 3s have been absolutely killing for us. Carly Giudice in general has been cashing me a lot of money. I mean, look at this on the screen now. These are all my bets on Carly Giudice fights, and as you can see, she has cashed me an insane amount of money, and she's only been in the UFC for like a year or something like that. So I think she's going to continue to be very profitable for me. I know how to read her fights. You know, she's a great fighter. Even in the fight that I bet on her and she lost against Gabriela Fernandez, in my opinion, that was a fantastic bet. It was a very close fight. She looked great in that fight. The bets that I showed you there, boys, are third-party tracked on an independent website, so I cannot fake my record. A lot of these other scam decappers and frauds online, they don't track their record, right? Because they don't want their record to be tracked because they have a shit record. It's very, very hard to make a long-term profit in sports betting. It's very easy to pick one weekend of the fights. You know, it's very easy to win for a month. It's extremely hard to win for 7 years over the long term like I have done. So that's why no one tracks their bets, because they're all worried that they're going to be shown to be frauds and they're going to be shown to have poor results. I actually third-party track my record. That makes me different from almost anybody online because hardly anyone else does that. Going back to this fight though, I got Carly Giudice all day, just like I have in most of her fights in her career so far. You know, Juliana Miller, her opponent, is not on her level, nowhere near her level. So Juliana Miller is a pace girl, a pressure girl. She's a tough girl, likes to drag you down to the mat and kind of wear on you. If you watch her last fight with Ivana Petrovic and a fight against Veronica Hardy, and honestly all of her fights on the feet, but those two specifically, you will see how many levels below Carly Giudice on the feet she is. And it's multiple levels below, boys. You can say 2 or 3 or 4, even 4 levels below on the feet. This is going to be a massacre on the feet. She is going to get absolutely butchered on the feet. Her only hope to win is dragging the fight to the ground. And if some of these girls like Gabriela Fernandez could not do it for a long period of time, who is an absolute beast, horse, behemoth of physical prowess in that women's MMA division, then I don't think Juliana Miller is going to be able to do it. She's so athletically outmatched. It isn't funny, and just striking technique wise, she's outmatched. I think that Carly Giudice knocks her out in this fight. So my prediction is going to be a knockout win, TKO win for Carly Giudice. So that's it, boys. Another video done. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's crush 2026. We're only really just getting started. There's only been 3 UFC cards so far. We have about another 40, and I'm super motivated for it, boys. I'm going to be in front of your screen every week, helping put cheddar in your pockets. Thanks for watching the video. Click subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.